Morning, everyone, and welcome to North Carolina's Emerging Tech Landscape. On behalf of NC Tech, we're excited to bring you this session this morning. This session is designed to give you a snapshot of North Carolina's dynamic and rapidly growing tech ecosystem. Today, you'll hear from three leaders in the state that are driving and supporting entrepreneurial growth. They will share more about the trends they're seeing in their key regions, types of innovations, and ways young professionals and founders can plug in and get involved. For those of you who may be new to NC Tech, we are the state's technology association representing the interests of North Carolina's tech sector. Our work is centered around four core pillars: sector promotion, peer networks, talent development and research, and advocacy and government affairs. Each year, we host about 100 activities and events across the state and work with more than 600 member organizations, collectively representing over 250,000 tech employees. If you're interested in the topics that we're exploring today, we encourage you to join us for NC Tech's brand new signature event, TechFest North Carolina, on May 13th and 14th in downtown Durham. It's a two-day celebration of innovation, North Carolina, and the future of tech, blending insightful conversations with entertainment in one of the state's most vibrant downtowns. Earlier this year, we launched our Young Tech Professionals Network, or YTPN for short, presented by Fidelity Investments to create a space for early career professionals to connect, learn, and grow. We've already seen great momentum with over 70 YTPN members so far, and we're excited about where the community is headed. If you're not a member of NC Tech or the YTPN, our team would love to connect with you and help you get plugged in. This webinar today is a part of our monthly YTPN programming. However, we open it up for all to join given the broad interest in the emerging tech landscape and the relevance and timeliness of this occurring during RDU Startup Week. It's great to see such a strong turnout today. We have about 60 people on the call right now, which is awesome. A big thank you to our panelists for sharing their time and expertise this morning and to the organizations they represent for their important work they're doing across North Carolina's entrepreneurial ecosystem and their ongoing partnership with NC Tech. We're also proud to partner with RDU Startup Week and appreciate the role they play in strengthening the region's startup community. Before we start the session, just a couple of housekeeping items. The session is being recorded and we'll share the recording with all registrants afterwards. We'll also leave time at the end for Q&A, so feel free to submit your questions using the Q&A function on your Zoom screen at any point during the session. This is typically found at the bottom of your screen, but it also might be at the top toolbar, so just check both those sections if you can't find it. And then with that, I'm happy to introduce our moderator for today, Riley Keene, attorney and shareholder at Banner Woodcoff, as well as a member of our Young Tech Professionals Network. Riley, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, like Alex mentioned, I'm a patent attorney with Banner Woodcoff, based out of Raleigh, and yeah, do a lot of work in tech throughout the state and nationally as well. But yeah, I'll kick it over to the panelists to kind of just give a brief introduction about yourselves. Juan, maybe we start with you.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for having me on. So I am Juan Garzon. I'm the executive director of Innovate Charlotte. We're a nonprofit that supports the tech and innovation-based entrepreneurial ecosystem in the greater Charlotte area. And we support founders and the community by hosting different events, programs, including founder education programs like customer discovery labs and founder jams. We also host the annual Seed the South Capital Summit, which is a venture capital conference. It's actually coming up next month, May 18th and 19th. And we do some research on the ecosystem, kind of seeing how the Charlotte area is doing compared to other peer cities and markets, and really just try to be a connector and help entrepreneurs navigate the Charlotte startup community. So if you are in the Charlotte area or want to learn more, you can visit us at innovatecharlotte.org. And if you want to learn more about the venture capital conference, it's seedthesouth.com.
Great. Yash, why don't I turn over to you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the opportunity. Hey, everyone. Nice to meet you all. My name is Yash Mehta. I work at CED, the Center for Entrepreneurial Development. We are a nonprofit founded in 1984, supporting the early stage startup ecosystem in North Carolina. So we're privately funded, and sort of the vision came about with the early vision of Research Triangle Park. So a lot of executives at IBM and a lot of the other large corporates back in 1984, they realized a need and a growing, sort of rise of early stage startups. So that's where CED was founded back then. What it looks like now is we support three primary groups of people: founders, investors, and service providers. So for founders, we have great programs like our Grow Incubator, where it's an 8 week long program that happens a few times a year, where we work hands-on with a lot of startups and, through their early stages around, topics that Juan just mentioned, right? Early customer discovery, and it sort of caps off with a demo day. We also do a lot of founder programming and mentor matching. Let's say you are a founder building in the software space. We'll make sure that we connect you with someone who's been there, done that. For investors, we help connect them with deal flow and companies and startups that they could potentially invest in or help support. And for service providers, like law firms such as Riley's, tax providers, we really help plug them into the ecosystem through a lot of our events. One of the flagship events that we've been hosting since our inception in 1984 is Venture Connect. That is the state's one of the state's largest venture capital events. We had this past year, it just happened in March, and it happens every year in March. We had 90 companies on stage, over 1,000 attendees. So if you want to learn more about CED, our website is cednc.org, and you can directly connect with me on there as well.
Awesome. Jim, turn it over to you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jim Roberts. I'm the founder of the Network for Entrepreneurs in Wilmington, NEW, and I'm also the founder of the Whale Angel Network. The way we work in Wilmington is much like CED. We're an independent nonprofit that's helping entrepreneurs, mostly in tech and life sciences. We're trying to help those entrepreneurs create better jobs so people can live at the coast. And It serves as a funnel for the Angel Network that I also run. So if we put on great events, we're going to attract great entrepreneurs and they're going to tell us our story. We'll see how, they follow through with the help that we provide. And if we like the progress that they make, then we put them in front of our very small Angel Network. We're usually the first angel capital into these companies, and then they're able to leverage that investment. And I'm pretty well known in the ecosystem, whether it's good or bad. My reputation is on a daily basis. It seems to change, but those investors can then call me and say, "Hey, why did you invest, or why did you not invest in this company in your region?" And that's a very unique role within North Carolina. For those of you who don't know me, I also started the very first Tech Entrepreneur Council in the Charlotte area in the year 2000. I was then recruited to the Asheville area in 2003 to start their very first tech entrepreneur support organization and also an angel network there. I was one of the top people at an organization called COIN, the Center of Innovation for Nanobio. And I also worked for the North Carolina Department of Commerce in the International Trade Division, and then got recruited to Wilmington to open the UNCW CIE incubator in 2013, which most people consider the real start of the formal ecosystem in Wilmington.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks everybody. Yash, why don't I kick this first question off to you? What's a startup sector or emerging technology coming out of North Carolina right now that you believe deserves national attention, and why are you especially excited about its growth or potential?
Yeah, absolutely. When we consider the innovation economy, right, anything that's, forward thinking, innovation sort of based company, a couple main sectors come to mind. There's software, there's biotech, there's ag tech, climate tech, that sort of category. It could roll up into something called deep tech. And then, we have advanced manufacturing, right? So one of the things that we do annually at CED is we compile data across the entire state of North Carolina for venture activity. So where are the dollars coming into from all across the US or internationally into North Carolina HQ'd companies, across what sectors, which companies are getting funding? So, for the longest time, right, and for 6 years, right, we hear software come up so much, and for the first time in recent history, one of the sectors that rose above software was life sciences and advanced manufacturing. So collectively, last year in the state, $3.4 billion roughly went into, that was the total funding, right? About 2.1 billion of the 3.4 went into the two sectors that we call biotech and advanced manufacturing. Now, to answer your question, one thing that we are seeing, one sector that we're really seeing a lot of excitement and activity, namely from out of state investors. We're talking the top funds in the Bay Area. Their eyes are in North Carolina for this advanced manufacturing sector. Most notably, last year we had Vulcan Elements, which is headquartered down the road here in Research Triangle Park, Durham, North Carolina. They raised 600 million plus dollars, right? And majority of that was from out of town, out of state investors. And they are just in a nutshell, what they're doing is they're focused on sort of the critical manufacturing of rare earth materials that are very critical for our supply chains, whether it's our electronics all the way to defense applications that are critical to national security. So the Department of War, Department of Defense, they were heavily involved in the deal as well. And I'll end with this. The CEO of that company, he was pretty vocal when he mentioned why they decided to headquarter in North Carolina. A couple of the points are, of course, quality of life, right? It's better for all employees. They just announced a manufacturing plant in Benson, North Carolina, so they're going to contribute towards our state's labor metrics. It's close enough to Washington, D.C., right, for their defense side and Pentagon and that sort of agenda, and their proximity to really sharp talent that exists in universities all across the state, right? So that's that advanced manufacturing sector is one that a lot of folks are bullish about.
Awesome. Yeah, so Juan, I'll direct this one to you. Wilmington, the Triangle, and Charlotte all are obviously three somewhat different ecosystems. What does each region have uniquely that folks should be paying attention to?
Yeah, and of course, speaking to Charlotte specifically, we've got a couple banks here, and so fintech obviously is something that gets talked about a lot in the region, really, right? When you're looking throughout the Southeast at what differentiates these different ecosystems. But Charlotte is more than banking. Charlotte is more than fintech. We've got just launched the Pearl, which is our healthcare innovation center with our new med school, the Wake Forest School of Medicine. And there's some really amazing things. I mean, we helped to launch the G Beta Charlotte Health Accelerator there at the Pearl in partnership with Advocate, working with Wake Forest, working with EarCAD and Siemens and some of the other players that are in that space. And if anybody's familiar, looks up the Pearl in Charlotte, what you see, all of this amazing stuff, that's not even half of what's going to be in that district in the future. So the life sciences med tech space in Charlotte is also rapidly growing. And beyond that, we've got energy through our Jules Accelerator. I mentioned fintech with our RevTech Labs accelerator, and exits and companies like Avid Exchange, billion-dollar company. And then we've got some other industries that are sort of up and coming here through UNC Charlotte, which recently got their R1 designation. A lot more emphasis on cybersecurity, which is of interest in all of these spaces in health tech, in fintech, and others. We're seeing defense is kind of an interesting one. Some events and some companies that are playing in that space. And I've been to some fascinating conferences here as that starts to build up in the area. And then the one that I'm pretty interested in that I think you're going to see a lot coming out of Charlotte is the housing innovation area. So the week of May 18th, 19th, after our See the South Capital Summit, is the Housing Innovation Summit here. And when you think of all the things that make up the housing innovation space, it crosses multiple verticals. One of the things that we have in Charlotte a lot are corporate innovation centers. And we have corporate innovation centers for Duke Energy. They're dealing a lot with energy efficiency. Lowe's, we've got their innovation center, and they're dealing with home automation. We have advanced manufacturing happening, the outskirts, out in the kind of the perimeter of Charlotte. We have, of course, home financing through all of the banks. So when you touch on all of these different aspects, and not to mention the philanthropic efforts in Charlotte to increase affordable housing, I think there's a big opportunity in that housing innovation space that we're going to see out of Charlotte that's going to kind of make us stand out throughout the Southeast, just based on the strengths that we have there. So lots going on in Charlotte that are unique to Charlotte, but at the same time, we love playing with all of our friends kind of in the Southeast, sort of working together to make the region stronger.
Awesome. Jim, any particular thoughts on your end from a Wilmington perspective on that one?
Yeah, we're probably going to surprise you is that there's a lot of fintech going on. If you're not aware of a publicly traded bank on NASDAQ called Live Oak Bank, they have really transformed the city for the better, to the point where their company and their branches of startups, they don't have branches of their banks. They're a virtual bank, but they have these startup branches that we call them companies like Encino that also went public and had, tons of employees. That a lot of these companies were started by UNCW grads that went to work for Live Oak. So Encino is publicly traded, which means some of the investors had an exit for this company, and obviously their employees did very well. Another company called Aperture, which was recently acquired, that raised $80 million in venture capital. There's a new company called Simply. There's more companies from Live Oak employees that aren't necessarily spin-outs of Live Oak, but are from former Live Oak or Encino employees that are now using, if you will, the Salesforce skills that they learned from the management of Live Oak or Encino, and have now taken those skills and started other companies, maybe even in other verticals. But I think the most important thing is Wilmington has the largest venture capital fund for tech or fintech in the South. It's called Canopy Ventures, and it's a $750 million fund that is investing in local companies, but also, has offices across the country. With that kind of money, they're able to work with entrepreneurs across the country. The other thing that's happening is it's either health tech or deep tech, depending on how you talk about it. And we have some really exciting companies in that space. Now we are challenged to fund those companies, but I think Yash would agree that I'm very aggressive in the triangle, trying to connect our Wilmington entrepreneurs to the available capital that goes to their events, or they see me around town at all the other events as well. So I'm kind of playing that advocate role of rolling up my sleeves and going to bat for the companies that are in our ecosystem. The deep tech side is really interesting. We have a company that's going through the NCIDEA process right now of trying to get a seed grant. It's called Nareem, and they are literally trying to read your brainwaves while you sleep by using some deep technology, basically meaning that your pillowcase is connected like IoT, Internet of Things, and reading your brainwaves to improve your health. It's kind of a sleep technology, as well as if you learn why you're not sleeping well or what's happening, you can improve your health and improve your performance. So it can be also interpreted as defense tech if the Army starts using this technology to improve the health of the soldiers and the pilots. So I think deep tech, fintech, health tech are maybe some areas that you wouldn't think of if you still think of Wilmington as just having beach balls and umbrellas for the shade, and silly beach stores that sell those things. Our economy is certainly grown beyond the tourism and service economy that you're probably more familiar with at the beach.
Yeah, definitely. Um, Great. Yeah, so let me flip it back to you. What entrepreneurial resources exist in your region that founders elsewhere in North Carolina probably don't know about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what we all just learned from that last question was, uh, what we traditionally thought that each region in the state it had a focus in. We see that there is, a bit of everything in all these regions across North Carolina. Something that we like to say at CED is, we're sort of a jack, North Carolina and the sectors and the startups that exist. We're a jack of all trades, master of none, right? We have amazing companies across all sectors. So because of that, we have amazing startup resources and founder resources and available for all sectors. So a couple notable things. Obviously, CED, right? We're the longest standing nonprofit supporting our innovation economy. We're sector agnostic. Our flagship event, Venture Connect. Jim does a great job of getting as many Wilmington companies out there as possible. Juan with the Charlotte side, right? And um, we're sector agnostic, and we provide a platform through the form of a flagship event where if you're building in any space, you can get on stage and share to the world, raise dollars, make critical key connections with what you're building. We have a really active grant system right across the state. We have something called NC IDEA. They have two grants called a micro grant, which is a 10K grant, and a seed grant, which is 50K, right? And some of and they're sector agnostic, right? I mean, there are CPG like food and beverage companies, some that some folks on the call might pick up from their local grocery store, right? I mean, they've been funded through these grants and they're stocked on shelves, right? So, if you're building in the CPG space, we have commercial kitchens with their own connections and resources to really get you out there. We have a really active, and this is a little bit triangle specific because I'll pass it on to Juan and Jim after. But if around here in the triangle, we have a rich collection of co-working spots, right? Raleigh founded, Cary founded, American Underground over in Durham. In fact, if any of you all on the panel have some availability and free time today or tomorrow, we have Raleigh Durham Startup Week. That's sort of halfway through. It's been going on since Monday. It's a great way to check out some of these spaces. It's totally free to attend, shake some hands, meet some people. I've touched on sort of our CED. I've touched on our co-working spots. I've touched on our grant programs. Let's Something else that we're seeing over here are venture studios, right? So if you're building or interested in the ag tech or climate tech space, there's Sprout AI Studio. One of the a little bit more on the software side, one of the co-founders of Pendo, Eric Bodek, he's launched, for a few years now, 24 and up. Right. So what they're really focused on is, of course, in North Carolina, we have a lot of folks that are domain experts. Maybe they're experts in the HVAC space or roofing space or, just traditional service providers. Or let's say you're deeply embedded in, something related to technology at your corporate job, and you have a vision to spin out a startup around it, right? So these studios and these studio-based models, they're there to help connect you with the right technical talent to launch your startup. So, we really believe that there is something for everybody out there. And of course, yeah, I'll pass it off to Juan because, each of these regions have their own, set of amazing resources as well.
Yeah, and similar to CED, we host founder support programs. We do a lot of founder social programs. I mentioned customer discovery labs. We also do these one-day founder jams. So we've got product jam and growth jam. 5 companies get invited, and they work the entire day using AI tools and individual facilitation to support their product development, for example, with product jam. Or go to market with Growth Jam. So there's a variety of different other accelerators. I mentioned, RevTech and Jules and GBeta and all of that programs that founders can connect with. And then there's lots of just opportunities to connect with other founders and hear their story. We host a pitch breakfast every month. We've been doing this for 13 years now, where we invite 3 entrepreneurs to pitch investors in front of a live audience. Think of it like Shark Tank, but with much nicer sharks. And we've had over 700 companies go through and get do their pitch and get some investor feedback on that. And it's also a great opportunity to go and meet investors, meet entrepreneurs, meet other potential co-founders or potential customers. So all of these resources that exist in Charlotte, along with, like Yash mentioned in the Triangle, co-working spaces. I think we had at one point in time more co-working spaces than breweries, which is a lot of co-working spaces because we have a lot of breweries. And different social events. We do Charlotte FC nights. We do Tech Leaders Forum, summer cruise on Lake Norman, founders and funders, pickleball tournament, right? Just opportunities to hang out with other founders in a casual setting and kind of hear what they're up to. So a ton of that, and a lot of that can be found, if you're interested in the Charlotte area through our newsletter. Yeah, Jim, I'm sure there's some more resources that you guys have that are different as well.
Yeah, one of the things that we haven't talked about yet is 1 million cups. Wilmington, one of your own members at the Young Professional Organization here, Jack Fleming, runs the 1 million cups here in Wilmington as one of the top 5 chapters in the country for attendance. And we're still a pretty small city for Wilmington. So he's done a great job since the pandemic to rebuild the momentum that 1 million cups had before the pandemic. We're also part of an organization called the Wilmington Small Business Coalition, which is 14 organizations that help small businesses. We all help different kinds of small businesses. So again, I mostly help tech and life sciences. So that's a real strength. We also have our own kind of venture conference. It's September 10th. If you're not from Wilmington, the area code for Wilmington is 910. So we make a really big deal of September, which is the 9th month, 10, 9, 10, 910. So our Wilmington Investor Buzz-In, which is our version of a fly-in or a venture capital conference, is in September when the weather's still good. And if you need to write off a business trip to the beach, we highly encourage you to join us for that. We've really lined up some good speakers from across the state. This is our 4th Buzz-In, so we're pretty excited about that. Other than that, I'd like to go back to what Yash said is we, as in Wilmington, we call it the Coastal Corridor, where we make the travel between Wilmington and the assets at CED, the assets at the North Carolina Technology Association, and NC IDEA. And something that hasn't been mentioned is First Flight Venture Center, which is kind of an incubator, but with all the equipment that you would need to develop a product. We have some clients that use that, which including Nareem and Opiate and Boreas Monitoring Solutions, and these great companies that have product companies, physical products. So First Flight Venture Center is a really great resource to you have shared equipment, so it's not so expensive to use, but also training on how to get the SBIR grants, which are huge federal grants, which can be $250,000 to $2.8 million. And that money is really used for the research side that investors don't want to pay for. Investors want to be the fuel. They want to be the growth. They want to fuel sales. They don't want to necessarily pay for the R&D. So if you can learn how to go after these SBIR grants, that's really good training for first-time entrepreneurs.
Awesome. Yeah, Juan, I'll turn it back to you. What opportunities exist right now in North Carolina, particularly in the startup or early stage space that young entrepreneurs might be sleeping on right now?
Well, we had talked about a lot of resources for entrepreneurs in terms of accelerators and social and all of that. I think, I know we've got a lot of folks on the call who are not just entrepreneurs, but, tech professionals or aspiring tech professionals. And so one thing I wanted to kind of mention here is that, certainly you can found a company, you can start a company, you've got an idea, you can tap into some of these resources to see if that idea has legs. Maybe you can, use some of the resources to go out and get some customers and potentially go after funding and all of that. Fantastic. However, one opportunity I don't want, young tech professionals to sleep on is working at a startup, right? Identifying a company that's got kind of figured out its product market fit, looks like it's going to go somewhere. If you come in as one of those early employees, there's huge opportunity in that, right? You come in and you're that fifth employee. You're wearing lots of different hats. You're really learning what it takes to operate a scalable venture, and you're coming in and being one of the foundations, even helping to drive the direction of that company. You will walk out when that company has an exit event, hopefully with a lot of equity in that business that allows you to go out and become an investor, or maybe start your own company with your own sort of funds. You also come out with a world of knowledge, and things that you learn from leadership, things that you learn from the roles that you take on. So I would not sleep on identifying an up and coming startup, and go trying your hand helping them build that up, because that's a huge opportunity and is going to teach you far more than any MBA is going to teach you. And if you have that experience and you decide you want to start a company, you're going to be a much stronger founder than if you just sort of come out of college with an idea and try to make that happen. Not that it's impossible, but you're going to be a lot stronger doing that. So when you think of these accelerator programs, I mentioned G Beta, Customer Discovery Labs, Founder Jams, or some of the accelerators and other programs that Jim and Yash mentioned. Think of it as opportunities to find companies that you like, that are up and coming, and maybe the ones that are starting, they're hiring and getting some traction. See if there's any opportunities there for you, and I think you can get a lot of benefit out of that approach.
Uh, I'll chime in really quick, right? Because maybe some of you all are wondering, how do I hear about these startups, right? Beyond LinkedIn. So I'll mention a couple really good early stage tech news, resources or articles or newsletters that come out that might be worth subscribing to. So a good one is called Grep Beat, GREPBEAT. I believe they covered the whole state, but it's every Tuesday, every Thursday, it'll hit your inbox. You'll hear about a startup, maybe something that piques your attention, bookmark it, right? Maybe follow the founders of the company on LinkedIn. Um, Juan mentioned Seed the South, right? His event that's coming up. Well, they've released, or they will be, the list of companies that are pitching or attending there, right? Go through that list, right? And maybe identify a few that really speak out to you, bookmark them, try to go down to the event if you can. And the other good thing on the Wilmington side is Jim's got a newsletter as well. I think twice a week it hits your inbox, and he's constantly reporting about up and coming startups in the coastal region. So that's just a couple resources. At CED we have our own newsletter as well. You can find it on our website. And just trying to connect to a couple of these news channels will sort of, that'll be the first, good step if you want to hear, more startup names.
Well, I'll chime in as well. I think Yash has overlooked his own opportunity, which is, can you work at CED? Can you be an intern at CED or one of these other organizations where you have access to these really smart entrepreneurs that you get to interact with? And if you give the right impression during your internship, they could be an excellent way to get a new job working for the sexiest new startup. Is you get access to all of them by working for these organizations. As Yas mentioned, there's the website called GretBeat, but there's a section within there where a guy named Brooks Malone has interviewed all the former CED employees and what they are doing with their current careers. And they all credit CED with giving them, an avenue to meet important leaders and CEOs and entrepreneurs. That's where they learn how to be a better entrepreneur when it's their time and they have the bright idea, that light bulb goes off on the idea that they want to run with as an entrepreneur.
Awesome. Well, shifting gears a little bit, Jim, I'll kick this one over to you. How is AI reshaping early stage, roles in career, and what advice do you have to folks who are, starting out in view of those changes?
Well, thank you for the softball right down the middle. I'm very proud of the two Wilmington companies that have won the best AI and data analytics company at the North Carolina Technology Awards. So we had a company called Opiate and a company called it went right through my head what it's called. Sorry. Predicate is the name of the company that just won the best AI in the last awards event. And so you AI does allow you to kind of be anywhere in the world, and you're working on this cutting edge technology. But so I would pay attention to those companies, but also there's three or four guys who do a lot of writing in North Carolina about AI, and you could follow them on LinkedIn. One is Joe Procopio, who is a former journalist and a product manager. He's very forward looking. You can follow Scott Wingo and the Tweener Fund and what they're investing in. You can follow a guy named Tom Colopy, not Joe Colopy of Gretbeat, and they're actually not related. Tom Colopy is a really good writer on all things AI and what he is seeing in the ecosystem and what he's working on. So I would follow those people and what they're writing about, and they're right on the cutting edge of where AI is going, as we all kind of hear about the potential of a one-person unicorn. And there's now a two-person unicorn that was in the New York Times just in the last 2 weeks. So if you are going to go into AI, it may need to be as an entrepreneur, as these companies will have fewer and fewer employees. But I would follow those people and what they're doing and see if you can spark your own innovation.
Awesome. Yash, I'll turn it over to you. What do you think North Carolina's secret sauce is that, when it comes to building tech businesses? Is it kind of the talent, the capital, or something else that you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we've all seen, seen it live, maybe through traffic on the roads and whatnot, right? I mean, the state undoubtedly, especially post-COVID, there's just so many folks that are here, for all the right reasons. Quality of life is amazing. Lower education, higher education, all top notch. Um, we're seeing a lot of companies move over here. In fact, in Durham, just yesterday, there's a company called AbbVie, biomanufacturing. I think $1.3 billion investment into their Durham plant. Lot of large corporates and Fortune 50s in Charlotte, publicly traded companies in Wilmington. So, the right ingredients are here, right? We have a really strong advantage of really good corporates in our backyard. Quality of life is amazing to build over here. Even for investors, right? They sometimes the word gets thrown a little, maybe not in the most positive light, but when investors come here for investment, they call it discount shopping. But the reason is because the valuations of companies here aren't as inflated as the Bay Area, right? I mean, these are founders that have a capital efficient mindset. They will stretch the dollar out the largest that they can, and for the right things, right? So I think this combination of good corporates in our backyard, right? What that means for startups is that's their early pilots or early first customers or early adopters, right? Um, a really strong education system across the state where good talent can be pulled from, and of course, a lot of the resources that the three of us mentioned on the call. It's a good. We have all the right ingredients, and I think that that's the focus for each of the three of our organizations at CED, at Innovate Charlotte, and uh, uh, at Jim's Wilmington
New.
organizations at New and Whale. The thing is that we all identify that the right ingredients are there. I think it's one of our North Star priorities, that how do we connect them all together, right? How do we get the right people talking? How do we get the capital flowing? How do we get the right early stage support for folks, maybe some attendees on the call that are at corporates but thinking about, an idea, right? At and nights and the weekends, right? So I'll pause there and maybe someone else can chime in.
I think it's talent, talent, talent. The universities, I mean, we're going to have to go way back, but in the 1950s, North Carolina was actually the second poorest state of the 50 states. We were only trailing or only ahead of Mississippi at the time. But when the RTP was built, it was meant for brain gain and brain retention to keep the best college graduates. And that's exactly what's happened, even though it's been a long plan. CED is, in my opinion, one of the top five reasons that North Carolina has such a strong economy. Um, their 42 years of existence really shows the rest of us how it's done. And we steal all their best ideas, and they know that. And I have no shame in saying that I steal a lot of what CED does, but with my own twist on the coast. So, there was a time where 25 cities every year would come to CED and say, please explain how you built this entrepreneur ecosystem. And really, that's what the rest of us are trying to catch up to. But with, again, the tone that our areas are specific to how we talk in Wilmington is not the same as how Charlotte talks with the banking culture. And so we have to find a way to make it our own. But again, the talent piece and the assets that are in the state capital that are pretty unique and not available in every state.
Cool. Juan, I'll turn it over to you. Kind of maybe we wrap up with this question and then we look at some of the Q&A. But what do you think North Carolina's tech ecosystem is going to will look like in 10 years? And what do we need to do in the next, year, 2 years to get there?
Yeah, sure. So, as Jim and Yash had talked about, there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of things that are working well for North Carolina. And one thing that I think ties to that's going to take us to where we can be is a lot more of that regional thinking. And I think it's already happening. There's a lot of efforts there to collaborate more as a region, as the Southeast. And you've got VC firms and others that are really looking at it and saying, hey, sure, can a Charlotte or can a Raleigh or can a Wilmington compete with a New York or a Boston? Maybe not. But as a region, the strength of the region as a whole, and when you look at the proximity to these stages, I mean, just with Raleigh and Atlanta, for example, we're right in the middle of that corridor. They're quick flights, not that long drives, and there's a lot of collaboration already happening there. And I think that's going to take us to kind of that potential. What it needs to look like in 10 years is we need more exits. And this really hits on the capital issue, which I saw somebody asked a question about. It also hits on the experienced founder. Like we need higher quality founders. As I mentioned before, if you're one of those early employees, you've got that operator experience, and then you have an exit event with funds, you now have money, but you also have the experience and the know-how to build a stronger company. So the more exits we have, the more we focus on highlighting those key companies and supporting them till they have that exit event, the more the flywheel starts to turn. That's what we need to really jump on as a region and as a state, is to ensure that we're maximizing those exits, keeping those founders, the exited founders, engaged, right? We don't want them to take their millions and go move off somewhere else. We want them to stay here, stay engaged in the ecosystem. And then you're going to see that flywheel really start to pick up steam. And I would put, North Carolina and the Southeast region against any of those, tier one markets here in a few years, once we continue this sort of working together and supporting these companies.
Great. Yeah. I think we've got a couple questions here in the chat. So Alex, maybe I'll turn it over to you and we can go through some of that.
Awesome. Yeah. So if you haven't already, put your questions in the Q&A function down at the bottom of your screen. We'll try to address as many of them as we can. We have about 15 minutes left. Had a couple of questions about listing all the kind of resources that we've discussed in this call. I will try to do that in a follow-up email after this. So I'll discuss with my panelists on this call, and I'll try to get you all the resources they mentioned. And then we'll also send the recording out in a follow-up email. So a couple questions about that. So our first one I wanted to address was, what is the biggest need that each of your specific ecosystems have?
Well, my organization, we're in the smallest region of the three of us that we're talking about. So we need economic support for the ecosystem because mine is independent. Um, Secondly, is capital. We all think of the Wilmington region as very as a lot of wealthy people that can afford to live at the coast and afford to have that nice beach house and the boats and so forth. But we haven't found a way to kind of crack that code of, and I think it gets back to Juan. I think the more exits that we have that reach the news and the newspaper, I think there'd be a lot more curiosity on how people can become angel investors or invest in funds that make the investments for venture capital funds. Those are the two things that we really need. So that's my contribution here.
Awesome. All right, another question that we have is why do you think so much venture capital is coming from outside of North Carolina? Objectively, there's a ton of capital inside of North Carolina. What is the root cause of this investment trepidation within North Carolina? Is this changing? And I think this kind of stemmed from your first response, Yash. But if anyone, Juan or Jim, you have any thoughts there, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have investors here that invest in our homegrown companies. In fact, a lot of the pre-seed and seed funds have an investment mandate that's geographically bound, whether it's only North Carolina or whether it's only Southeast, right? Now, why we see a lot of dollars coming in from out of the state goes to the point that I mentioned earlier, right? This discount shopping aspect. What the thing is that a lot of funds in the Bay Area and New York, right? I'm talking about traditional venture capital funds. They're constantly, fund one might be $50 million, fund two might be 100 million, fund three might be 500 million, right? So the more and more dollars that they're raising, they have to invest in companies that are so I sort of liken venture capital as jet fuel, right? It's jet fuel for a rocket ship, right? So they're looking for absolute home run wins, multi-billion dollar exits type of companies. The thing is that the companies here in North Carolina, the Southeast, they're still fantastic, phenomenal businesses, even beyond a lifestyle business, right? I mean, these are still venture backable businesses, but you're starting to see a lot more of that, especially with the talent displacement. That's gravitating here in the Southeast. More of a reason to stay here and build here. That's why the eyes of the nation are coming here, and not just North Carolina, but the Southeast as well. I mentioned that a lot of founders here, they could take a dollar and stretch it really far before they make their first hire, right? They're not going out the gate hiring 20-person sales teams on that first seed or Series A round, right? So the quality of companies here are a lot more, and I think because of that, we're grabbing a lot of the attention from across the state.
Yeah, just
Can I
just to
add to that? I'd like
go
to
ahead,
add
Jim.
that if I can, I think you're finding that there's a lot of UNC and Duke grads who are now working at these venture funds that may be spread out outside of North Carolina. One of the guys that invested in Encino was actually a Wilmington native, but was working for a San Francisco-based fund. So I have seen a lot of that, and I know that I do a lot of reach out, and I know CED does a lot of reach out because they have much bigger reach than I do as a one man independent nonprofit. But some of this reach out is really paying off, and I think that's what you're seeing in these out of state venture funds.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, there's two issues in that question. The one is out of state investing in North Carolina. That's a good thing. There's a lot of interest in the state. There's a lot of interest in the region, and we want that. And one of the things that I've been telling founders a lot, especially since the pandemic, is your best capital is not necessarily local capital. So we had a lot of Charlotte companies that say, well, where's the Charlotte investor for this? But based on their industry, the best capital may actually be in another state, in another market. And since COVID, a lot of investors have said, no, I don't have to look at what's local. I could do a Zoom call and go to a conference and all of that and engage in other ecosystems such as the Southeast. And they're seeing a lot of success there. So, that's all a positive. In terms of the trepidation, I can only speak to Charlotte and not the rest of the state, but we have a lot of wealth in this community, and certainly in the state, but certainly in the community. That money was primarily made in healthcare, real estate, and banking. These are risk-averse industries. These are not people who came out of tech and risk capital and the venture world. So they approach angel investing or even becoming an LP in a VC firm very differently. And so, yes, the money's here, but it's not as accessible as it might be in other markets because it's just a different nature of where those markets come from. And then the last part is, a lot of these communities, and certainly in Charlotte, we do pretty well at bringing corporate headquarters. So from an economic development standpoint, the energy behind like, hey, we have to get our entrepreneurial ecosystem going because it's our lifeblood. We don't really have that the way other markets do. And blessing and curse, but the nature of the capital is different. And then the last part I mentioned earlier is we need the flywheel. We've had a lot of folks in Charlotte who have invested in companies. Those companies haven't exited yet, so their dollars are still locked up. And they don't have unlimited dollars to just invest in every new company. We need those exits to be able to unlock some of those dollars. And as soon as some of these folks, some of these angels get that exit when Passport, which is about to go public, then all of a sudden they get that exit, they buy that boat. Their friends like, hey, what did you do? Oh, I want to get in on the next one. And now they start investing in more companies to find the next one. There's a little FOMO with that. So I think there's some uniqueness in our market as to why the funding is the way it is, but I think it's getting better.
Can I add one thing?
Go for it.
I talk about this at every event that I go to, is that your law firm that's representing you as a startup has to know the financial ecosystem or they're the wrong lawyer. They should be able to call the investors that they know on your behalf, that they are proud that you are their client and they believe in you as an entrepreneur, and they can make the call to the investors they know. If they're not calling these investors on your behalf, you have the wrong lawyer on your side. The lawyer can have a cocktail party, and you know that every possible angel investor in the room is going to go, hey, I know that you represented X, Y, and Z company that had an IPO. Who's your next client that has an IPO coming up or has the potential to be that big? And that's how deals happen in the South, is these relationships that other people are speaking on your behalf, and that the investors trust these people outside of people on your team. And that's one of the secrets of early stage investing that I don't hear a lot of other people talk about.
That kind of lends us into probably our last question. With the growing cost and profit constraints on small and medium-sized businesses, what are some of the long-term considerations that service providers should be taking into account when working on product development and marketing?
Yeah, just to touch on this briefly. We're really entering a trust environment. There's so many AI tools and new spin-ups and all of that certainly you have to be aware of. But most founders that I know, if they're looking for a service provider, hey, I need someone to help me with HR or a good lawyer, they go to other founders, right? And so you need to be able to, when you find a client, build a lot of trust, build community, be a part of the community, do your best work, because those founders will tell other founders. So I would just say, make sure that you're becoming a part of the community and that you're really making yourself trustworthy, because that word spreads fast in this ecosystem.
Awesome. Great. Well, that is probably all the time we have left. But I'd like to thank again our panelists for being on this awesome discussion, such great insights. Thank you to RDU Startup Week for hosting this awesome event for the Triangle and being so imperative in the entrepreneurial space in the Triangle. I'll send a follow-up email with all the kind of resources we discussed today, as well as some information about YTPN and NC Tech, and then also that recording. But again, thank you all for joining us. Thank you to our panelists. Thanks to Riley for moderating. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. And if you're doing any other RDU Startup Week stuff, I hope you have lots of fun and make great connections. Awesome. See y'all.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Josh.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.